Welcome to a very spooky episode of the thehodgypodgypod. I am your host, Lauren Strati. Mwahaha. Today is our Halloween episode of Menagerie Monday on the thehodgypodgypod, and we will be talking about spooky and scary movies, of course, because it is the week of Halloween when this comes out. So we have to talk about the classic horror movies and the scary movies and the not so scary movies, but they're Halloweeny and spooky, and we grew up loving them, and we're going to talk about them. And today we are going to learn some cool things about these movies that I didn't know a lot of this stuff, and I love that stuff. I love learning this stuff because it makes me appreciate those movies even more. And I grew up watching all of these scary movies, and I don't watch much anymore because I don't know about any of you guys, but having kids kind of changed my desire to watch people get torn to bits and stuff, especially teenagers, because I picture my kids as those teens, or I'm sad for the parents. Like I get all real with the shit instead of like remembering that they're just movies and that those people are okay. But I still have my classic movies that I love to watch around this time, that I'm okay with those people dying in those movies. I've accepted it. But there's just those classic movies that everybody knows. Even my husband, who's not a scary movie guy at all, has seen Halloween. And that was the one scary movie he remembers growing up. And that was like the one movie his parents gave to me when I asked them what their scary movie list was. And quite a few people actually aren't as into scary movies as I was growing up. But I know why I was into them. And that was like, the reason why I was into scary movies so much was because as a kid, I had my sister who would watch me all the time, and my sister was 10 years older than me. So when I was 3 and 4, she was 13, 14, and she loved to torture me and scare me nearly to death by forcing me to watch terrifying, scary movies. So like movies like Critters, Gremlins, Nightmare on Elm Street. And I still remember to this day having a nightmare about, I was in this castle with this spiral staircase in this castle, and down below there's all this fire, and then all of a sudden Freddy Krueger's head comes at me and absolutely terrified me. So I was completely and utterly terrified, especially of Freddy Krueger, for the longest time until I was like, I want to say like 12. And I told my mom, I was like, listen, I want to get over my fear of these scary movies, and I want to see Nightmare on Elm Street, and I want to watch it by myself. And so I ordered myself a pizza. I had some soda. I had some ice cream. And I'm like, okay, Mom, I need you to go upstairs. I'm going to watch this movie by myself. And she's like, please don't come crying to me when you have the nightmares. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. So that was the start of my love for scary movies. And we had a ton of scary movies on VHS. Those are tapes that you stick in the VCR if you don't know what those are. But we had a ton of those. And after watching Nightmare on Elm Street, I felt so empowered. Like, oh, I'm so brave. I was able to watch this scary movie. And so I just kept watching all of these terrifying movies, like Friday the 13th. And we had this movie called Witchboard, which was about the Ouija board, which was absolutely terrifying. Don't ever mess with don't touch a Ouija board ever. Don't do it. Don't do it. My sisters have stories that I have to get from them just don't mess with that stuff. But all of these classic 80s scary movies, one about like these 3 kids that had birthdays on the same day, and they were like evil kids. Can't remember if it was like happy birthday something, but I remember just going through every single movie we had on VHS and just watching them and becoming obsessed with these movies. And I liked feeling brave. And now I'm not so brave, but I was for a good long time watching all those movies. But like I would watch all of the Halloweens, all back when it was Halloween, like 1 to 8. Now there's like, and then like H2O and a couple of the other ones. Now there's like 1,000 of them. But all of the Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy versus Jason, or I still have all of the DVDs for Friday the 13th, all of the Screams, or like the first 3, and I might have the 4th one. But I just loved making homemade caramel popcorn, sitting my butt down, and just watching these movies. And I know that a lot of us remember that feeling, like we loved being scared and all the jumping, and it was just one of those. And they were classic movies, like those movies, especially like Halloween or The Exorcist. We just loved the shock of those movies before things got crazy with CGI and like super extra ridiculously gory. We had those classic horror movies. And so I want to talk about those movies and go into a little bit of detail about those movies, like The Exorcist. And because, man, that was one of those movies that scared me for sure. That one really scared me, but I still loved it. And I learned some crazy facts about that movie that I will refer to my notes a lot of times because there's a lot of information and my brain cannot retain all of that information. So just, if you see me reading or pausing for a second, just try not to judge me too harshly about it because I just can't retain all the information. But, so, The Exorcist, which was based off of a true story of like 1949, there was an exorcism of a 14-year-old boy who allegedly suffered from demonic possession. So I didn't realize that it was actually based off of a true story. But I heard so many different stories about they would have a priest like come in and bless the set because so many weird things would happen on the set because you're dealing with not great stuff. And even though it's fake and whatever, you're still bringing in that energy. So they believed that basically that the set was cursed because people died while filming the movie. People were injured. It was just so many different things happened on that set. It was kind of hard to not believe that it was like, it had to be cursed, right? With all of these crazy different things that happen. But I didn't realize that on this set, it was in 1974, I think is when this movie came out. They kept the set refrigerated to like 30 to 40 degrees. So like in that bedroom, it was actually as cold as it looked in that movie. There was no faking that. It was freezing. And when I mentioned injuries, there was Ellen Burstyn, who played the mom. She was injured with, she experienced a permanent injury to her spine. And then poor Linda Blair, who's just a kid at the time, during that scene when she's like jerking back and forth and everything, like she was tied down to a board. And when you see her like screaming in pain, like she's screaming in pain because it broke her back. It literally broke her back because she was tied to a board and they're like making her go all nutso and she broke her back. It was insane. And now you can't really get away with stuff like that or it'd be like stunt double or CGI or something, but it happened. And there was also like the split pea soup, like when she goes "Blah," and like they didn't let the guy who played the priest know that she was going to do that all over his face. So his reaction when that happened was genuine shock. They did not tell him they were going to do that. And they did that a lot back then. When I was reading through all of these different facts about these movies, they just didn't tell people that they were going to do stuff. And so they could get a genuine, real reaction from them. And so just like that, like, you don't realize you're going to get completely thrown up on all over your face. So you're going to be a little shocked. But they also had, I was reading that they have audiences completely freak out. They were traumatized by watching this film because it was so scary to them. There were paramedics that had to be called because people were so freaked out and hyperventilating and passing out. It was crazy. So that was The Exorcist. And there were certain deaths that happened and all that stuff, but I'm not going to go into that. It was just like, I had no idea that all of this stuff happened on the set, and that it was really, it was like its own scary movie within a scary movie. But so then what comes after that is we're going down the line of like classic scary movies, and some of these are my favorite, but like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I know they've remade this one. They've remade everything. But back in 78, or this was 74 too, something like that. Back then, they only had $60,000 to work with for this movie. And so they had to make do and just do the best they can with whatever they had. Like, the people on set, the actors only had one outfit that they had to wear the whole time. And it was Texas, and it was in the summer, and it was over 100 degrees. And they just, like, they had to be in this house filled with meat that was hot and gross, and and blood, and all of this stuff was real. There wasn't any fake blood, fake meat, or whatever. It was real. And they had to be in all of this, not getting paid a lot. There was no air conditioner. They just had to just kind of suffer through. They didn't get paid a lot to do it. They didn't. They raised $60,000 to make the movie, and it was a small budget, and they got like pennies, basically. But they made this classic movie, and I love finding out this information. I mean, I'm sure they would have loved to get paid more, but and what I love about classic scary movies is the technology back then. They had to work with there was no CGI. They had to do camera angles and real stuff. And like they had to make things seem real by sometimes kind of making them real. There is no guy on a computer to do it. They had to have that dead, gross meat sitting there for days in this heat so they could get these scenes done. They had the poor guy who played Leatherface. Nobody, this poor guy, he was this big, 6'3" tall guy wearing this sweaty jumpsuit that he had to keep on the whole time, and he's wearing a fake but a human face over his other face. That's why it's called Leatherface. It was a human face but made of human skin, and he had to be around this meat in his little area, his little butcher area, and he smelled, he was sweaty, he was the person that was in charge of killing these people on this film. And so nobody wanted to be around this guy. Nobody talked to him the whole time filming because they, A, were scared of him, and B, he smelled, and they didn't want to be, they already had to be inside that house, and they didn't want to be around anybody like that close. Like they literally had to open windows to get some air, throw up, and then continue on with their day. And it's so funny because you don't realize that. I mean, it was the 70s. Like anything went, right? Like anything to get the job done, they were gonna do it. There weren't as many rules. Everybody wasn't as sensitive. You just got the shit done. And I think I just love those little tidbits. But there was one fact about it that I don't know if you guys have seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but he's got like a chainsaw at one point in the movie, and he's running around, and the teeth were removed, but for some shots, but he was like going with it in the film, and it was a real chainsaw, and it came inches, like he like threw it up in the air, or it fell at some point, and it came inches from his face. Like he almost got killed by his own saw. Like it was like stuff was real back then. There was no, let me draw this in, or boop, 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 So the guy almost died filming this movie as Leatherface, barely making any money and having nobody talk to him. But he is a classic character, and I think that is just one of those all-time greatest, like, great scary movies. But then you have another masked man in Halloween, which is the one movie that everybody, and it seems to be coming back now, like everybody's love for Michael Myers. There's like TikTok guys like Michael Myers of Decatur, and there's the dancing Michael Myers with the stiletto heels and whatever. But like my son wants to be Michael Myers for Halloween. And like I said, it was the one movie that my husband and my in-laws saw. And that movie, you didn't see much. You saw this big, scary dude, and that doesn't speak, doesn't say anything, but he is absolutely terrifying. And it's so funny how you don't see him do, like, there's no real gore in that movie. And it's just this faceless, emotionless guy that just can't be stopped. And I think it's so cool that they can make that movie so scary but not like really showing any of what he was doing. And it's now everything's like, oh, show more gore. Like even watching like Deadpool, Wolverine, like that movie, like they were all about the blood and the gore and the shock factor that way. But in 1978, you didn't need that stuff. You didn't have the ability to do it really, but you didn't need that. And I really appreciate that. And I know that it's still one of those movies that I can watch and not get totally freaked out by. But what I learned about that one was, if you know Halloween, you know that it was Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, and she's still playing Laurie Strode now in whatever number movie they're on at this point. Like, it was supposed to end, and then it's like, gotcha, we're not gonna end it, and then gotcha again, we're not gonna end it. But she only got paid $8,000 for doing that first movie. That was it. Just $8,000. I think it's 1978. She wasn't really in much. She was Janet Leigh, who was in Psycho. The woman in Psycho. She was Janet Leigh's daughter. And so they wanted her in this movie. And so that was it. She got paid $8,000. But it was also, I didn't know this, that they were supposed to be, Halloween was originally supposed to be called The Babysitter Murders. But it was simply just changed to Halloween because that was when it was going to be released, and they just figured it was more catchy than The Babysitter Murders, which I agree. Like, I feel like that would be Babysitter Murders number 22. Doesn't really have the same ring as Halloween H2O or whatever. But if you And if you didn't already know that mask, that classic mask, and I feel like this is a fact that most people know nowadays, but that classic mask of his was William Shatner from Star Trek. That was his face, but it was like spray painted white and like slightly altered. But that's what that was. That was William Shatner from, it was Captain Kirk from Star Trek. So I feel like most people know that fact, but if you didn't, that's where that came from. So, but what I also learned is, if you don't know Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street, he was an assistant on Halloween. He was actually like one of the people that helped scatter the fake leaves around to make it look like it was fall in Illinois or wherever it was. And then he played the classic character of Freddy Krueger. So it's just fun how like they all like tie in together. But it was, I mentioned that they had so many different sequels, and John Carpenter, who did the movie, was like, he expressed like it was flattering that they kept it going, but also ridiculous at the same time. Like, just like me, we're at like movie 20. It's can he just die? Just the first 7 or 8 were cool, but can we just... So I'm glad I'm not the only one. He was the one who like created this movie, so it was, yeah, sometimes you just gotta know when to quit and just love the classic. And Halloween is definitely just one of those classic scary movies that are just, he says nothing. There's nothing. He never says anything, but he's so scary. But then you have somebody who does talk a lot in Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger, a little chatterbox every time he calls somebody on the phone, like when they're dreaming or anything like that. Like, that movie was, I got through it when I was a kid, but it was scary because it's your dreams. So it's, when you're dreaming, you don't have control unless you're like one of those people that are really good at controlling your dreams. But most people just dream and go, what the hell what was any of that? But most people don't have control over their dreams. So it was super scary to think like, oh my gosh, we need to sleep, but we can't sleep because this guy might come and kill us. And if we die in our dreams, we're dead. And that was such a scary concept back then. And he was such a scary guy with his, with his hands and like just his whole look. It was just terrifying. But I didn't realize that Nightmare on Elm Street was actually based off of real events. It was after reading, so Wes Craven was the one who did the movie, and after reading an article about a group of teenage immigrants, they moved to the US from refugee camps, and they died in their sleep after like suffering from disturbing nightmares. So he took that, plus Freddy Krueger was an amalgamation of Wes Craven's childhood terrors. So Freddy was the name of a bully who used to beat Wes Craven up in elementary school. And his signature hat that Freddy wore in the movie was based off of a neighborhood drunk who would scare Craven when he was young. And his weapon of choice was inspired by house pets and infomercials. Craven didn't want Freddy to wield a simple knife like Michael Myers or Jason in Friday the 13th, so he drew on his own fears of cat's claws and a series of late-night commercials selling sets of knives to create his iconic knife glove. So I had no idea that you just don't realize how many of these details come from the actual lives of the people that create the movie. You just think that, oh, they're just there. But this guy was created from Wes Craven's all these different things. And now you have this classic character based off of Wes Craven's bullies and weird cat and knife commercials. Like, it's just so strange, but it's so fun. And I love it. And then, so those movies were the classics, right? Those are the ones that when you think of the 70s and the 80s, there's also Poltergeist, which was absolutely terrifying to me as a kid because I felt like I was Carol Ann every time I watched it. And it was just, that was one of those movies. And was it Poltergeist 2 with the creepy guy at the door? And like, he was scarier than anything. Like that guy was absolutely terrifying. If you haven't seen that movie where the guy comes to the door and he looks like he's been dead for centuries, but he's not, like that was absolutely terrifying. And there was, I said before, Critters and Gremlins. People consider Gremlins to be a Christmas movie because it happens around like Christmas time. And I remember loving Gizmo, but and the whole thing about eating after midnight or whatever happened to them. But I don't remember it being as scary as it was. And I tried to watch Gremlins with my kids last year, and I had no idea how many people die in that movie. Like after the first or second death, I was like, I need to go and see how many people die. Because the kids were like, Mama, what is this? Like, they're so cute, but what the heck? And there was like 12 people that died in this movie. And I was like, nope, not a Christmas movie for us. And it's just like, you know, when you only remember bits and pieces when you're a kid, you're not going to, and I never went back to that movie. So note to self, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Gremlins, not. Die Hard, yes. Gremlins, no. Anyway, but so we have those classic movies, and then my one movie that I absolutely love, and I used to fall asleep to the third movie, and that's Scream. Scream, I absolutely loved Scream 1, 2, and 3. I love the whole psychological part of it, how this killer, you're trying desperately to figure out who it is. You know that it's someone you see on the screen. You know that you try and pick up on every little thing they say. And like, oh, this is a hint and this is a hint. It's gotta be this person, it's gotta be that person. And you're just like, who is it? And it's scary and it feels real. And it's shocking because these characters that you start to care about in this movie can just be like just taken out and gone. And you're like, well, I thought they were the killer, and oh shit, they're not. And it was just, those movies really kept me guessing. And I absolutely love Scream to this day still. That is the one movie where I think of making my homemade caramel popcorn and sitting down and watching. And number 2 is a little hard for me because I don't like that they killed Jerry O'Connell. Sorry, spoiler alert. But I don't like that they kill him in that. That makes me very sad. But the movie, like the first one especially, I love the first one and I love the third one. And the fourth one's not bad. And now they've got like 2 or 3 more out now, and I don't even want to. I'm just sticking with my classics because that's my safe zone. I know what happens in those. So, but I didn't realize that Scary Movie was supposed to be the title of Scream. Like, we know Scary Movie from their spoofs of Scream and all the scary movies, but I never realized that. Could you imagine Scream being called Scary Movie? It just seems just weird. But they didn't really like the name Scary Movie, and I didn't realize that they were impressed by, the creators of the movie were impressed by Michael Jackson's song Scream, so they're like, let's just call the movie Scream. And so this movie was inspired by the Gainesville Ripper murders in 1990 and John Carpenter's Halloween. So it was a combination of that. And so this also was, so Kevin Williamson's the one who created this movie, and he was watching a documentary about a serial killer who killed 5 students after sneaking into their apartments. And then later that night, Williamson found a window open in his house that he was certain was shut before. And he spent the rest of the night searching his house for, like, sure that somebody was in the house and that something was going to happen to him. And he had a knife in hand, and he was absolutely terrified. Like, he thought he was going to die. And so after that, he wrote the first draft of the movie and came up with the sequel and the third movie. But I didn't realize that they had quite the struggle trying to, they had the idea for the mask and they were trying to find it, but it ended up being like a funhouse mask, and they had to struggle to replicate that mask, and they eventually like tracked down the original owner of the mask and had to like negotiate with them to buy the rights to this mask. Like, you just think it's a mask. You don't realize the stuff that goes into, like, it's a mask. But there's actually like detail and struggle for the ghost face. Like, could you imagine if it's anything but the ghost face? It wouldn't be the classic Scream movie that it is. But they also used roughly 50 gallons of blood in the making of Scream. 50, so that's a bunch of corn syrup and a bunch of red food dye. And like, that is a lot of blood. And they just, because that's when they started to get into more gory stuff. Like, it was psychological, because you don't know who's next, but you also know that if somebody dies, it's gonna be bloody and it ain't gonna be pretty. And Scream absolutely, like, from the opening scene with Drew Barrymore, they show you that it's not gonna be pretty. And what I love about it, and what I learned from this, like, doing this research about Scream, was that Drew Barrymore was originally supposed to play Sidney Prescott. They wanted her as Sidney Prescott, but she was like, no, she signed on, but she is like, her biggest pet peeve was that you always knew the main character was going to be like in it till the end. And so you see Drew Barrymore at the start of this movie, and you're like, she's gonna be fine. She's Drew Barrymore. Like, she's America's sweetheart. Everybody loves her. And then by the, like, 10 minutes later, she's hanging from a tree with her insides out. And you're just like, what the hell happened? And you just know from that point on, no one is safe. And so you are invested. You're going, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Please don't let it be so-and-so. And then it's poor so-and-so. And you're like, dang it. But I commend Drew Barrymore for being like, you know what? I know that I am who I am. And I'm going to take this small little part because I know it's going to make this movie better. And it did. Like, it really did. And I really love that. And it's just these fun facts. I don't know if anybody else cares about any of them, but I like them. Like, when in the part towards the end, and sorry if you guys haven't seen Scream, but it's been a long time, so if you haven't seen it, get over my spoilers. When Billy Loomis throws the phone at Stu and it hits him, it actually hurt Matthew Lillard, who played Stu. And he's like, you hit me with the phone, dick. It wasn't, when he said that line, it wasn't in the script. Like, he literally was hit by the phone, it hurt him, and he was like, what the hell, man? So it's like funny little things about the movie. So when I watch that again and I see that part, I'm gonna be like, he didn't mean to hit him that hard with the phone. And like, it's just, I like those little things. But it's, those movies are just, there's so many classic scary movies. Those are ones that I have seen a ton of, so I can reference them back quicker. But when I asked other friends of mine to give me a list of their favorite movies that were spooky or some funny, some suspenseful, all of those different things. Like they gave me, I've got one friend of mine and he gave me this big list, and reading all of them, like, oh my God, because you forget, right? Especially if you don't watch them, you forget. So he listed off Scream, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, Scary Movie, Shaun of the Dead. Like I remember going through my whole zombie phase, but I never watched The Walking Dead and any of that stuff. Like I was past my zombie phase by the time that stuff came out. But Shaun of the Dead, Resident Evil, all of those scary movies, Arachnophobia. I remember every summer watching Arachnophobia on like ABC, and you see John Goodman come out, you know, and just like smash the spiders and take his like flamethrower shit at, you know, taking care of all these spiders. But like when it was summertime, you knew Arachnophobia was going to be on the TV. And Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary or It. I couldn't do It. I had to have in my closet, my mom had these like porcelain clowns, and they ended up on the shelf in my closet when I was a kid. And after watching, and I didn't even get to the end of It because I was like 8, and I just saw the clown, and I had these clowns in my closet staring directly at me. And I was like, get them out of my room right now. And I couldn't do it. And so I was not a fan of clowns for a good long time. But so Pet Sematary was absolutely terrifying to me. Like the thought of, and we had cats at the time, so the thought of my cat coming back to life and being evil and ugh. Then there was, of course, all the Final Destinations, and we all, you know, don't get behind that log truck ever. Nope. That is, if you ever watched those movies, especially that one, you don't get behind that truck on the freeway or any type of road. You just move along, different lane. Or I've had those moments where, and I'm sure like some of you have experienced that, where something happened, like you slipped on the floor or something weird, and you just picture like slipping on the floor, then the knife flips into the air, it goes over here, it lands, it slides down the fridge, hits the microwave, and then in the chest, and you're dead. Like you picture all these, watching all of those movies, you picture all these weirdo, crazy scenarios of how you're gonna die because of Final Destination. And those kind of ones like messed with my brain and always made me super paranoid about weird stuff like that happening. But there was I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is a classic, and then I Still Know, and I guess Jennifer Love Hewitt said they're coming out with another one, so that'll be interesting. It always scares me though when they reboot these movies, or they have like number 4 or 5 or whatever, like with Scream, because you've got those original characters, right? Like if they're doing the movie like in the future now, and you have these characters come back, like Sydney came back, Dewey came back, and Gail came back in Scream, in like the Scream 4. And I was like, oh my God, who are they going to kill? This whole time I was like, please don't kill one of them. Please, just like they are my 3. Please don't do that. And they got through that one. But then the next movie I didn't watch it, but one of them didn't make it. And I'm really upset about it. And like, can you just stop and not kill one of the main people, please? Because at some point, one of them's going to have to die, or all of them. Like, they're making another one. Is Sydney going to die? Like, or the kids of all these people? I just stop. But, so I don't know what the I Know What You Did Last Summer thing is going to look like. If it's going to be Freddie Prinze Jr. with her, and they're like married or whatever. Like, I don't want anybody to die that I grew up with that survived. So please don't do that. But there was also the Rob Zombie movies, and like House of a Thousand Corpses, super disturbing, super freaky. Or Devil's Rejects. The Ring scared the crap out of me. 7 Days. That thing was super scary. There was Aliens, like all of those movies. My mom used to be really into those ones. I was never really a fan of Aliens. There's of course Ghostbusters, if you want to include, because it's Ghost, and those are just absolute classics. Yeah, you can't. Those are that is one movie that I will say, or one franchise. I am so happy that they continued, and they did that so well. Not the female version. We're gonna pretend like that one didn't happen. It was alright, but it's not the same. But when they came with that, they did the Afterlife one, and they had Egon, and they were able to do that. Like that technology that they were able to use to have him was amazing. And then the movie after that, the Frozen Empire or whatever, that was, I loved that they were able to do all of that and not kill anybody that we have loved for decades. So that I appreciate. Scream, no. The Ghostbusters, yes. But so then we have all the saws. I don't know how many, like they're on like a gajillion saws at this point. But those were terrifying too, because you're just like regular people, and then you wake up in this room and you have to do all these things to try and get out, and you don't know why you're there. And it's just, you put yourself in that position, right? Like, what would you do? Would you cut off your own foot so you can get out? Like, would you do this? Would you do that? I don't want to think about that stuff. It's terrifying. So please don't lock me in a room and chain my leg or have me do any of this terrible, terrible stuff. But there was, and then of course, Silence of the Lambs. That is a classic. And I absolutely loved Silence of the Lambs. It's super weird. I think the first time I watched it by myself, it was after I had watched Monk. And if you don't know the show Monk, we'll get into those shows like Monk and Psych and all of those down the road in a different episode. But the guy who played Captain Stottlemyre in Monk was Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. So he was the one who tucked his stuff in between his legs and like danced and, you know. And so seeing him in that movie and seeing him in the show was super weird. But it's a classic and absolutely love that. Then there's Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis that kept you guessing till the end. And I had that ending ruined for me, so I could never get to like appreciate or like figure it out on my own that he was actually what he was at the end. But still a good movie. And then The Grudge, of course, super freaky. Any movie like that with the and the hair over the anything like that, just like The Ring. Ugh, no. Resident Evil, like I said before, and Blade, classic Blade was one of those, like, it is a horror movie, but I found it to be more entertaining than like scary. And I like Blade 1 and 2 were just awesome. Blade Trinity. But there's so many classic scary movies or thrillers from the 70s to the early 2000s. And I think whether you like scary movies or not, there's at least one in that batch that you can appreciate. Like there was, I mean, Friday the 13th, you always think of on Friday the 13th. And I love that now. One good thing about like social media is like they can have the villains be less spooky and they kind of make fun of them and make light of them. And I like seeing, you know, the non-murdery side of these villains during these little TikToks. And my kids like them, but they haven't seen the movies because I'm not trying to traumatize my children. But like I said, my son wants to be Michael Myers, or if he can't be that, he wants to be Ghostface or Jason, you know, something like that. Like, okay, you say that now, but then when you watch the movies, you might change your mind. But these are like just classic movies that everybody knows at least one of. You've seen at least one. And there's also the non-scary movies that we absolutely love, like Practical Magic. Practical Magic is a really good one. And that one is just, they're also supposed to be making a Practical Magic 2. They know that there's still a cult following for these movies. And like I've said before, the 80s and the 90s, man, people cling to that stuff. They want that nostalgia back. They want to know more, like what happened after that. Like it's been 30 years or whatever. Where are they now? Are they still happy, or are they like what can they come up with now that they have all this different technology, and they want to know more, and so they're gonna try and give you more. And so that's why they're remaking all of these different things. But like I just heard that they're coming out with a Hocus Pocus 3. And I feel like Hocus Pocus 1 would have been just fine. But like I said, people are going to watch these because they grew up watching these. They still watch them. My daughter just said to me today, "Don't forget, Mama, we have to watch Hocus Pocus this year," because we've already watched Halloween Town, which is another classic. And it's one of those, it's so wholesome, and the jokes are so cheesy, and my kids are like, "Oh yeah, Marnie was so good at the comebacks." And I'm like, yeah, she was like so good at these super cheesy comebacks, like woo. But I love them. I love how cheesy those movies are, and they're wholesome. They're wholesome movies. Like Halloween Town, you can't get more wholesome than those movies. And my kids love them. Like we watched 1 through like half of 3 in a good, like when we were decorating for Halloween, and they absolutely just loved and still love those movies and Hocus Pocus. And or the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin, or Garfield, or the Halloween episodes of Home Improvement. Like they love to watch any of that stuff because it's not scary. It's more funny. It's more jump scare stuff. But they love it, and I still love it. And I like that I like the theme stuff, the holiday stuff where you can whip that stuff out. And I really enjoy that stuff. And so I don't know how you guys feel about scary movies. Please let me know. Let me know if you have a favorite of yours, and I will talk about it more again on a different podcast. But even still, I just want you to email me, DM me, let me know what you guys think about all these scary movies, and if you feel the same way I do about the nostalgia of it, how they are just classic. They're just classic movies, right? They're just classic scary movies that aren't filled with a bunch of CGI, a bunch of fake stuff. It's just good classic horror or good classic jump scare wholesomeness that just brings back memories of us trick-or-treating as a kid, when we could go out with our friends and trick-or-treat and not have to have our parents there with us, because the world was just different. And we would come back from a night of trick-or-treating, and our parents would be sitting there at home, like with the Addams Family on or something like that. And we would be just enjoying them going through our candy, and they would steal our candy, and now we're the ones that steal candy. But I loved that time. I loved having that independence, and my kids today don't get that same independence. So it's a little different now with the way that everything is, but I love that they can still enjoy those movies and those TV shows, and being able to sit down with them and have that time with them. But please send me your favorite scary movies or spooky movies, Halloween movies, and then soon, I can't believe that it's almost that time, I will be asking for your favorite Christmas movies. Still, it's insane how fast time is going, and it's crazy. But I'm really looking forward to doing those episodes about Christmas and traditions and getting into Thanksgiving, where we talk about being grateful and gratitude. And I know this episode is a little longer than my normal Menagerie Mondays, but there are so many scary movies and so many good Halloween movies, and I wanted to talk about them with you. And I still didn't even talk about all of them. But before I go, I don't want to leave you without some Mandela effects, because they just blow my mind still. So there was one in Scary Movie, and I remember this because it was funny and it made sense. But in one scene, in the movie Scary Movie, in one scene, Shorty says, "I see dead people," after getting high, referencing Sixth Sense. However, it says, like, many people remember him saying, "I see white people." That is what I remember. I remember him saying, "I see white people." That is what I remember. Clear as day. Or in Scary Movie 2, where the butler guy, like, says, "Grab onto my strong hand, child." Like, he never says that. But people remember him saying that. And he said, the line that he says is different. And people say, like, "Oh, you're just remembering it wrong." But it's like, and maybe it's one of those things where it's just like, it's been repeated so many times by so many people that we just think that that's what it was. But that line about "I see white people," like, why would he say "I see dead people" when it made more sense for him to say "I see white people"? So, but anyway, there's also like Dracula with "I want to suck your blood." He never said that in any of the classic movies. He never uttered that in the 1931 version or in Bram Stoker's like novel or anything. That was never. So where we got that from Dracula, we don't know, but he never said it. Or something as simple as "Interview with the Vampire." People remember it being "Interview with a Vampire," not "the Vampire." And it's like, I for sure thought it was "Interview with a Vampire" instead of "the." And it's like, oh, well, that's simple to forget or simple to think that it's this way. But people who absolutely loved that movie were like, no, it was "a," not "the." I don't know. I remember it being "a," but I never really actually watched the movie, so I can't really say. But the biggest one for me, which will forever irk me, is in Silence of the Lambs. And I looked it up myself, and he never says, "Hello, Clarice." Never. That is not what he says. So he says, "Good morning, Clarice." Ooh. Oh my God. Terrifying. "Good morning, Clarice." No, dude. She sees him and he says, "Hello, Clarice." Like, that's what he says. And I remember it. And it was scary and creepy. And even, again, Jim Carrey, the Mandela effect reenactor, he said that with, I think it was like Cable Guy. He was wearing a piece of bologna over his face, and he's like, "Hello, Clarice." And he said that. And people would say, "Oh, well, that's where you got it from." No, where did Jim Carrey get it from? He got it from Silence of the Lambs. So it's just one of those things that, again, I don't know why they happen. I don't know why things change or why we think they've changed or whatever. It's just something to drive us absolutely freaking nutty. But, so let me know if there is any other spooky Mandela effect or Halloween Mandela effect that you can think of. Send it to me, or what you think about the ones that I've talked about. And again, I want to know what your favorite scary movies were, your favorite Halloween memories. I want to know all of it. Don't be shy. DM me, email me. I'll give all the info in the show notes. And I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, I know it's a little bit of a long one, but I like this stuff. I like the fun facts and all of that stuff, and especially about scary movies, because I grew up loving them. And I hope that you love this episode and that you stuck with me till the end. And I will see you for a little bit more of a serious episode on Thursday. It's kind of a doozy, but I gotta get it off my chest. And yeah, it's deep. But yeah, it's a scary episode for sure because it's my life and what happened was insane. So stay tuned for that. Again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. Still new, still learning, still figuring my stuff out, but thank you for sticking it out with me. And I hope to just keep growing and doing more episodes and hearing from you guys. So please email me, DM me, and I hope you guys are all doing well and have a happy Halloween. Eat all the candy that you want. Just live your life. Love your life. Live it. Don't stress. Just have fun. But I'll see you guys on Thursday. Bye.